We have a very special guest. You are going to be blown away once you've met this man. Please meet Larry Moore. Hey, Larry.
Oh, the other hand. Hey.
Hey. Yeah, everything's backwards when you're using a camera.
I know. I'll get used to it in a minute.
Yeah. You could scoot over that way. Then we can see it. There we go.
There he goes.
Good, good.
Yeah.
So, Larry, tell everybody where you are.
I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. It's a marvelous town. Great art community. It's an art buying destination. It's a tourist destination. It's ranked very high by Condé Nast. It's a beautiful place to live. It has everything you want. It's hot in the summer and cold in the winter.
Inspiring as a painter?
Yes. Well, the irony is I moved here for the gallery life, but also because the streets are so paintable, which I did for about 6 months. And then I got onto these bigger series of personal pieces, and I don't paint outside all that much anymore.
You're going to show us some of those things?
I'm sorry?
You're going to show us some of those bigger pieces?
Later on. Yeah.
Oh, good, good. So what are we going to do today? What are we going to talk about?
Well, I thought I would start off with a little bit about my background, because it's very important to the things we're going to be talking about. And that is, my start was in graphic design and advertising, and which is a field I love. It's very problem solution oriented. And I'm going to tell you all this sort of lengthy story, condense it down, but all these things happened concurrently. I was doing them all at the same time. But I started working in advertising, and I loved solving problems, and it was very much about design and concept. From there, I transitioned into illustration, commercial illustration. Both of those careers spanned about 25 years. At the same time, I was painting outside just for pleasure. And even though I slept through 4 years of art history, I didn't even know it was called plein air. I was just painting outside.
Nobody knew.
That's what I did. But all of that led up to me deciding that there needed to be a conversation about the creative process in art, and I couldn't really find anything on it. So I started teaching in 1990, college level, and then went into workshops. So from that point, I wrote that book, this book.
Yeah, pull it up, because I was just looking to see if I have a graphic of it. I don't.
Shameless plug. But
good. Hold it still. Fishing for Elephants. Where do we find it?
You can find it on Amazon.com. It's a workbook. Let me do this right. So there's a lot of history, a lot of the psychology of art, which I think is ginormous. And one of the things that I talk about the most is the psychology of making art. And look what I just did. Paint on my hand. So I used that creative process, and from there, I started teaching abstract painting. So all of these things have led me to this point. All of this backstory have led me to this point of teaching creative process.
Well, I think that's going to be fun for us today. And can you? Are you going to do a demo of some sort? Give us a clue.
Okay. Well, why don't I just start off with a little PowerPoint thing to show you what my talking points are going to be. But
why don't we? I'll tell you what. Let me go do my announcements. We'll come back to the PowerPoint, and then we'll jump right in. Sound like a plan?
Yes, let's do that.
All right. Now, tell me again. Where do they get the book?
Fishing for Elephants is on Amazon.com, and it's a print on demand, which is a genius process because I didn't have to print 10,000 copies. If you order a copy, you get it in a couple days.
Okay, so somebody put that in the comments, please, so everybody knows where to get it.
Yeah, Amazon.com.
If it's like any other day, there will be about 800 people who buy it. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you because I want to make sure you get ample time. You want to go right to the slideshow?
Yeah, it's a lead in to what I'm going to demo, and then we can come back to look at some of my work.
All right. It's not showing up here on my dashboard, so you need to do whatever you did before.
I'm going to do it. Here we go. I'm going to choose. I got to push a bunch of buttons here, so bear with me.
Okay. That's what we do these days is we push buttons. Okay.
Okay. And for some reason, let me see if I can make this. There we go.
Can you hit it and play? And
yeah, I'm going to do a play.
And I'm going to make it larger.
Does that work?
All right.
Is that working for you?
Yeah. Is it working for you?
So here's a conversation for today. And my background, which I just gave you in a tiny little nutshell, led me down this path of considering work from a different standpoint. I did take a few workshops in my day with Scott Christensen, who's an amazing man and a great teacher and a great friend. And I spent my time learning the process of painting and the how. But when I would go into the museums, I started thinking about the why. What separated one artist from the next? And I kind of narrowed it down to these three ideas, which I'm going to skim through, which I cover extensively in the book. But I wanted to identify for my own purposes. And I decided that because I'd spent nearly 50 years as a visual communicator, I would look at my life as being my source of education and not just what I have gleaned from other people. In other words, I wanted to figure it out for myself. So I've kind of narrowed it down to these three things, which is content, the language that we speak in, and I'll show you what I mean by that in just a second, and then the concepts that are buried in that language, or the language that's buried in the concept. The language is the components, the components of painting. And just to give you a little background, my background, so you know where I'm coming from, I'm just going to show you three illustrations. And these are problem solution pieces. This is what I love about the commercial illustration world. And some people have maybe an antiquated view of illustration. It's very concept driven, very narrative driven. You have to communicate an idea to an audience in a very succinct, compelling way. And that is a challenge. And some of our greatest artists, as we all know, the Dean Cornwells and N.C. Wyeths of the world, were illustrators, and they are brilliant at what they did. So I went out seeking this kind of work for a period of time. So I went to the opera in Orlando, and I went to the local theaters, and I offered my services at a greatly discounted rate in order to apply and chase after this narrative-based work. So that's an oil painting, by the way. This is for an opera called Aida. And so I did, I think, ultimately 40 of these paintings over 10 years for this client. And it was a great...
Were they used for posters or something?
Yeah, they were used for posters. And it was a wonderful... they gave me carte blanche to do what I wanted to do. And each one was, I wanted it to be different. And at first I started using different mediums, but to keep a brand and a consistency, I ended up just doing oil over the years. I also, all my life as an illustrator, worked in this medium, this marvelous medium, which I force my students to use now, called gouache. And I like it because in my life as an illustrator, I worked in pastel for 25 years and oil for 35 years, acrylic, you name it, airbrush even, and gouache. And gouache to me is this wonderfully playful, fun medium, which has the properties of all mediums. It's not a large scale medium. Every painting has to be small generally. You can work somewhat larger, but it's a very versatile medium. So I did these probably 10, 15 years ago. These are theater pieces, and they have to tell the story of the play. And again, this is stuff that I went out and got for myself. Anyway, that's my little example of a backstory of my work. And one of the things I gained from the history of what I did was I found that there was continuity between all these different methodologies of visual expression. And I bring these concepts into helping people discover their own voice, which is the most important thing to me. So I teach now, I don't teach plein air anymore. I don't teach realism-based work anymore because it's important for me to help people find what their voice really is. And that is discovered after long periods of time. It doesn't just show up, but you can...
Question about that. Do people discover their voice?
Yeah, people discover, you watch the arc of any artist, and that's what's great about getting a retrospective book on Diebenkorn or any of the great painters, realist or other. You watch them progress. One thing that I want to point out to you that is central to discovering your own voice is knowing your story. And there's no better example of that right now than a Netflix show called Chef's Table. And I highly recommend to all my students or attendees, I don't like to call them students, and artist friends, because it's not about cooking per se, it's about finding your voice. And that voice is always rooted in who you are, where you came from, what's important to you, what your values are. And I think initially, Eric and crowd, we have to go through this process of learning the fundamentals. Don't get me wrong, you've got to learn the rules so that you can learn to break them. But one of these 5 or 6 components of painting, these aspects of painting, I find they're in every great painting. And these are kind of standard mechanics to two-dimensional painting. That's a little gouache piece I did in a beautiful stream up from Scott Christensen's house in Idaho, by the way. But these aspects of painting apply to both realism and to non-objective painting. And where you want to be, finding your voice means finding where you want to be on that spectrum of painting. I'm going to show you some examples. But these 6 things, which I'm not going to get into too much, but hierarchy is basically composition. Where does your eye go first? And you have to control that. And that is as true for neoclassicism as it is for contemporary abstract painting. So the eye needs to be engaged and move through. And the other thing I teach is that we need to consider not the content necessarily, but the energy in each piece, because every part of a painting carries energy and carries weight. And variety, which is a major concept, which means that you'll find it in shape variety, mark variety, value variety, edge variety, all those kinds of things. It's a very important component. Juxtaposition means that for energy to exist, you need 2 opposing forces, dark and light, hard and soft, intense color versus neutral, that whole thing. And then ultimately, we want to create this kind of balance. And that combined with the concept that's driving the piece, the why of the piece, is what I call the intent of the artist, is what makes the voice of the artist. So I'm going to do a little demo here in a minute, and I'm going to real quickly show you how these concepts play out in 4 paintings by artists you may recognize. But core to this process of finding your voice is this concept of what if. You may know that I have a page on Facebook called What If University. It's a free page that deals with creative process and this what if sensibility of trying things that are outside of your comfort zone in this search of a simple premise. And that's what a lot of great artists base their work on. It's a very simple premise. This is John Singer, another, I can't remember his last name. But the thing about John Singer Sargent is buried in his realism, his brilliant bravado of paint handling in both watercolor and oil, are amazingly wonderful abstract concepts. And this is one of my favorite paintings because of how it works. And what he's using pattern and value to disguise the main actors on this stage. And drawing your eye to the back by contrast and value and edge, but buried in there, which you don't see it right away, are the guy and the 2 deers. It's a brilliant idea, and he does this in a lot of his work. I could go on for days about that guy, for all the brilliant concepts that are hidden in his beautiful paintings. This is a gentleman, Alex Konevsky, whom I discovered, I take credit for that, years ago in a gallery in New York. It was in Chelsea, but I knew he was going to be a thing. And when we're trying to find the simple premise, one way to do it is to try and explain your work like elevator speech. If you have to explain your work to someone, what do you say about it? Well, you know, it's not about capturing the light necessarily. It's like, what are you doing? And so what Alex Konecki is doing is he's playing with value and edge here, and he's pitting that dark on the floor and the darks in the interiors against this lighter background. And he's using pattern versus rest, you know, which is something we find in music. All these truths that apply to art apply to everything else: music, writing, poetry, and painting, in all forms. And then Henry Matisse. So what can we say about this piece? Well, he's flattening space. The piece is about symbolizing the thing rather than rendering the thing. The concept of variety shows up in the negative shapes, the blue shapes. No two blue shapes in the space have the same volume. That's the concept of variety. So what we do in my classes is we start with the known, and this is two from me. This is a study I did again at that little river in Idaho, and then an abstract piece that I worked out from the study. So what we're after is who we are in these pieces in our work, and what is our motive, what is our intent in the work that we do. And that does come over a span of time. So I'm going to stop sharing, because this is going to be my work. That's a gouache piece, by the way, study.
Oh, why don't we go ahead and do your work?
Oh, all right, then fine.
There, and then we can go on to the demo.
Aren't you clever?
I am clever.
I know you are, and a good man. All right, we're going back to this thing here again. All right.
I stopped you earlier.
Yeah. Okay. So I have two bodies of work that I do. John Burton yesterday said so many good things. That guy is so brilliant, and I love him as a person, and he's a brilliant painter. But he said this idea: I don't know that I'm right, but I know I'm certain. And that's the key to being authentic, is knowing you may not be right according to the models of the world, but you're certain that you're right for yourself. And that's key to being authentic. Sometimes once we learn the rules of what we're doing, we have to come to that place and say, I don't think I want to do that. I want to do this other thing. And I just wanted to get that in there. So I had two bodies of work, which I think is just fine. You know, some people may say, well, which one are you? And I'm like, I'm both, because I raised as a visual communicator. I speak many languages.
I love hearing that.
But yeah, right? And it's fine. And the training I get from abstract painting, I put it back into my realist work. And you can see it in the marks and how I throw something out that's important out to the edge rather than putting it in the middle of the painting. So
the window that's drawing the attention feels like Le Mondrian.
Right. And the principles of dynamic balance are kind of at play. Yeah, the bird's a very strong element, but the floor carries a certain amount of energy as well, and it's a balancing act. So all the components of value, edge, mark making, drawing, pattern, and rest, they're all at play, and they all they want to carry their own unique weight in such a way that you end up with this sort of dynamic symmetry or balance in a painting. So I love these little gouache studies because they give me something that I don't get in oil, and then I learn from them, like the mark. It's very mark driven, and that's what I love about it. And they're small, and this series that I've been doing for now 5 years is basically animals in places where they don't belong. Yeah, I know. It's called Intrusion, and the thing is, the series has legs, and that's a bad joke, bad pun, because within the confines, the parameters of the idea. And Richard Diebenkorn, the great mid-century painter who was all over the place too, by the way, not comparing myself, he said there's freedom in the limitations, which means if you develop a simple premise, there's ample room to move about in that simple premise. If you throw everything at a painting, we all know they go south. So the simpler your premise is going in, the better the outcome will be. And so this concept of putting an animal where it doesn't belong is a mixture of abstract. It's basically a monkey sitting in an abstract painting and becoming an abstract itself. So, so every piece that I do within the parameters of an animal in a place that it doesn't quite fit is me playing with different ideas within those strict parameters or vague parameters, I guess. This one's called Untitled, which is basically my joke for the elephant in the room. You know, I don't want to talk about it, kind of an idea. But my idea was with this piece was to bury this giant animal in a space. This is a big painting. Most of my work now, since I moved to Charleston, is big because I like working bigger, and fortunately, people like that as well. So I'm using the components of value and edge and pattern and rest to bury this animal in that space. And though you know to look for it now, when I was working on it, people would come in and look at it for 5 seconds and go, "Oh crap! There's an elephant in the room," you know. And it's actually a kind of a visual pun, which I love visual puns. And then, so I can play with things that are important to me. My backstory, in addition to being a visual communicator and an illustrator, was I love nature. And I was looking for a narrative in my work, personal work, that didn't involve a cowboy or an Indian, because that was not authentic to me, or a chef in a kitchen, or ballet dancers. That's just not authentic to me. But animals in these abandoned spaces, that somehow was a fit. And that's how I landed on it. It took me a while. Some people come to it sooner. But I love this series. It's fun to play out. And with these larger pieces, I get to play with the weight of a value or the lost edge. I've done a lot of this. I'm sort of backing away from this lost edge idea because it can be sometimes disingenuous for me. So I'm now going to more sort of harder shapes and that sort of thing. This one's called Family of Man, and it's about my idea of we're basically humans are animals who happen to have houses and credit cards. So but people don't always have to know that. That's just my take on things. This one's called Panic Room. It represents a period of my life that was a little, shall I say, chaotic. And this is a great way for me to tell that narrative story without putting a person in it. And the added component of what is this weird animal doing in that space? You know, it's a story that writes itself when people come in. And then I can also use some mechanical devices to play with these ideas. In this case, and I started painting, I should say this, I started painting differently every time. I may draw it out on a grid. I may, in this case, just start washing stuff in. And I just love what the paint can do. One of the great things about painting abstract is you fall in love with paint. And I can't wait every day that I do these to see what happens. You don't have an outcome in mind. It just evolves. And that's a fun and scary place to be. So this piece, as it was evolving, was just a wash in. I'm like, boy, do I like that. And I did several along these lines. And all I did was sort of render out the toucan to create the balancing agent that I felt that I needed and let the paint do its job. This is a bigger piece, way more sort of finished, but it was a commission piece and 60 by 60. And it's just a polar bear in a train station. That's all it is. But, you know, I use the resonating shapes of the architecture to back up the bear and to give the whole piece strength, and obviously the arc and the ceiling that leads down to his cute little menacing face. And so a lot of thought goes into these ideas that are beyond the simple premise of an animal in a space. This one is a kind of a reference to growing up and having lion country safari in southern Florida that you could drive your car through. It was a wild animal park, which I thought was kind of, I don't know, weird idea. However, it's what it is, what it is. So I did my own arc. The painting is called Arc, which is, you know, the parks end up becoming, and zoos end up becoming the last bastion for many animals. Not everybody gets the idea, but I don't care, because I am certain, even if I'm not right. So in summation, and then I'll get to this little demo-y thing. These are the things that I try to get across to both abstract and realist painters. That is, the wonderful thing about abstract painting is you have to lose control for a while. And it's like a conversation. Painting is a dialogue, a conversation between you and the canvas. And when you put down a mark, that mark gives you something. It changes the dynamic. It's a chess game, which I love, no matter what methodology I'm using, to have this constant dialogue with the painting. I'm not controlling the outcome. It's a two-way street. And so that way of reframing painting, which is not trying to manhandle the outcome, is how you end up with people like, John Burton, we talk about his painterly process, is 100 layers of decision making and allowing the thing to evolve rather than trying to dictate the outcome from the beginning. That's how we end up with stiff, uncompelling paintings, or not compelling paintings. The second is learning to create your own model. And I'm just going to show you one way of considering this process. The thing is, when we paint realistically, we are oftentimes just duplicating, not just, but duplicating a model. But when we are seeking our own voice, that requires us to break away from that model and insert ourselves into the art. And that's our job as artists. In order to do that, you have to build trust in your own work. And John said that yesterday, to be certain that you are at least on your path and on the right track. And the way you get there is this idea of discovery, by play, by trying different things, even the things that are uncomfortable, so that you can discover what your actual aesthetic really is. That takes time. I might mention someone like Mark Rothko, it's a name that most people know. His work didn't show up in its form that we know for 30 years. It took him forever to get to that place. So there are shortcuts. There are ways to speed up the process that I like to teach. But ultimately, my goal is to help the attendees in my classes and in students in life to be true to themselves, to find intent in their work, develop an idea, a simple premise, and find their authentic voice, which is no small feat and takes time, but is so rewarding. And I'm out of, there we go. So now we're back.
We are back. Okay.
So
you're going to do some demo for us now, right?
Yes, I'm going to do a thing.
That was fabulous. It was worth every penny I paid for that.
I know, right? So the check's coming never?
No, it was really good. I was making notes because I realized I really I need to play more.
Yes, you do. And really centered the whole play thing is, and again, John Burton beat me to the punch, and I'm sure everyone else did as well, is you have to lose the fear. The fear of screwing up.
Yeah.
The uncomfortable place of not knowing is where growth is. It's not in doing the same thing over and over again. I will reiterate that we do have to learn the basics and the premise and be good at them. You have to have.
I'm working on a painting right now, and I worked on this painting for 2 or 3 weeks. Put a lot of stuff into one section of it, and that section wasn't working. And last night I just got a big paintbrush and covered it.
Yeah.
And after weeks and weeks on that one particular part of it.
Yeah.
And I was fearful.
Yeah.
And yet I stepped away. I just painted that section over, just completely covered it. And I stepped away, and it was like, it works. It was perfect. And the fear worked in my benefit.
You take the power back. It sounds like everyone gets in these power struggles with their paintings. And again, I've been teaching for 30 years. I see this stuff, every time I teach. It's a power struggle. It's like, let it go. Let it go. If you're in love with, this is anyone who's taken my classes has heard this one before. If you're in love with the process and not the product, you will be joyous every day of your life. If you enjoy the process of painting, because that's where discovery is, that's where growth is, that's where you live in that space, and not put any weight on how good or bad something is, or compare yourself to anybody else, or whether it sells or not, which we all like to make money.
Well, you know, I've realized that if you're trying to please yourself, you're happy, and if you're trying to please other people, you're not.
Yeah, you have to figure out who you are, and it may be you want to be a magnificent portrait painter like Cesar Santos, who is, you know, mind-blowingly good. I can't be that guy. For a long time, I wanted to be Scott Christensen. I can't be that guy. And then I realized, like, oh, you know what? I got to figure out me. And so that's what I said about doing, and that's important.
Oh, this has been very helpful.
Yeah,
now
thanks.
you've got some time to paint. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So let me tell you what I'm going to do here. And this is in the spirit of play and developing a simple premise. And I was going to do, you know, 3 or 4 of these things. Like, nah, it's just too crazy. But in the book, I have a lot of these prompts that are guided. They're there to help guide you into trying something when you don't know what to try, which is where people tend to get stuck. And I will say one of the things that has happened historically for me in my life is I ended up having a lot of people tell me, you know, I'm kind of stuck. I'm like, I'm never stuck. I wonder why. And that's because I have these little tools to get me moving. And that's really the key, is just get yourself moving and try something and anything. So I'm just going to give you one. And I'm to keep it simple. One of the things that I recommend, and I remember Brian Mark Taylor did a whole thing on this, which is the thing called chunking, is practicing the parts and not.
Matter of fact, we produced that video. It's called The Master's Mind.
Yeah, Master's Mind. And it's brilliant. And and a lot of these truths apply to everything. It applies to basketball, applies to playing a cello, and
Both of which I do, of course.
do you?
No.
Oh, I would be impressed. Don't you play guitar or something?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's smaller. But all these truths, that's the other thing I found, is that the central truths of art making apply to everything. The central truths and creativity apply to everything. So if you can boil it down to the tried and true system is, I'm just going to try a lot of different things and see which ones I like. That's what we're after here, is this process. And find something in everything that you do, good, bad, or indifferent, that is compelling to you. And then you follow that down a path. So I'm just going to play with a very simple idea, very simple premise here.
Camera closer, please.
Camera closer. All right, fine. I have a very high-tech system set up for you.
Yeah. Can you get closer?
Now.
Can you pull the easel towards you?
Huh?
Can you pull the easel towards you? You don't have any room?
No, I'm squoze in here. I'm having panic attacks.
You're squoze.
It's southern past tense.
Yeah.
I think. All right.
So,
one thing I can do is lift this up a little into the light. Is that helpful?
That's fine. That's good. Yeah. Thank you.
So I'm just going to do a 3-value exploration. And I'm going to play with an idea. And this idea shows up in the work of Bato Dragarjapov. I was going to show you one of his, but he's playing with value. Kanevsky, the piece that I showed you earlier, is doing just that, is playing with the value and not just copying what's there. So my idea, my simple premise is, and it just popped in my head this morning, because I'm like, what am I going to do? Is to do kind of a reverse tonalism idea. In tonalism, you've got 2 darker values, which make up the major portion of the painting, that are very close to one another, and then a light value. And I'm going to kind of reverse that, which is lighter values with 1 dark note, and reverse what I'm looking at, in a sense, not in the negative. Well, you'll see. So you can't see what I'm mixing here, but it's the secret ingredients are white, black, and gray. Portland gray, actually. Again, Gamblin reference.
Portland gray came up again.
So the other thing I want to say real quick is I'm a big proponent of weird tools. These things, not as a gimmick. The trick with a tool, any brush, any device, any paint, is not to abuse it. because if you use it more than once or twice, it becomes a pattern and it becomes evident. And I use it to develop mystery in my work, to hide brushwork, for example, to create layers where you can't see how they're applied. That's my goal. I just found this thing. I don't know what it is, but I think it's a wallpaper brush or something like that, or a shaving brush. I don't know. But it's like, I pick up these tools. This is a half of a knockdown knife that I got from Home Depot. And this is a chip brush. And this is a brayer that's used in etching inks. And I don't use them gratuitously. I'll use them to create variety. Is that concept that I mentioned earlier. So let's just start with a big old block in of stuff. And I want to keep this loose. You know, there's a million ways.
You're in oil or gouache?
What's that?
You're in oil, right?
Yeah, oil. I'm interested in just a handful of things. I'm creating parameters for myself with this problem, which is I'm interested in mark making. I'm interested in brevity, to see how much I can do with a little. And I'm interested in that sort of reverse tonalist concept that I just mentioned.
All right.
So I can do some, within the framework of this idea, I can play with the composition with great variety. And, but for now, I'm just interested in these weird value relationships. So one of the things that I recommend is once you land on something, as part of a process and part of the discovery process, is play it out, see it through. If you find that you like line, for example, in your work, try variations on it. See how many variations you can get on an idea. Even this simple idea of the reverse tonalist concept. And the thing is, you have to learn to listen, which is hard for people because we base what we do and know on what others have done. You have to listen and ask yourself, do I like this? Is this me? Is this something that is of interest to me? And if the answer is yes, then you move forward down that path. And that's how you find what works for you.
Don't go where you don't want to go.
Yeah, don't go where you don't want to go. So one thing that maybe artists say or don't say, even when I'm putting a mark down, every mark that I put down, even at the beginning, there's variety in that mark. I don't want to repeat a shape or an edge or a mark. I want every piece of this puzzle to have a rhythm to it, that the pieces refer to one another without repeating, because that becomes, a pattern.
Right.
So I love it already. I'm almost done. And I'm just kidding. And I have these other devices, which I'll use, maybe to remove. And you'll notice I'm going to try and do it in a way that it's not everywhere. Because the second you try that everywhere, it does become an obvious pattern. See what happens with composition. And I want you to watch every demo from now on that you ever watch where you have the opportunity to ask, to converse with the instructor, is say, not how did you do that or what color is that, but why. Always ask why. What are you after with that? Why that tool? Okay, not like, where'd you get that brush or what color is that? But I want you to note as we sift through these things, let's work through this process of how the playing field, the chessboard changes. This was priority in the beginning. Now I've got this thing in here. Now that's second and that's third. And that is basic hierarchy, right? And keeping this chess game in balance throughout the process becomes part of the game. So I want all my values to stay light. And that's probably going to be like a 2 and a 3. The other thing is, just so you know, I'm going to put a little galka in my bowl because it's so yummy. I've not done this exact exercise before. It just popped into my head. And my go-to thing is, what haven't I done? What haven't I tried? Mm. This is the thing about being in love with paint is you learn not to over control it and to let it do its job. And that's the trick with gouache, especially. And I may not stay completely true to my reference. I may decide to leave things out. I may decide to put all the emphasis in this corner over here and let this space carry its own weight by just the nature of that mark. So one of the things in painting that we discover especially in abstract, every mark changes the game. Every mark changes the playing field. And sometimes if you want to fix an area, address this thing, like I could make that lighter, and I probably will. Let me just get a different tool here so I have a different kind of brush mark. I'm gonna try a palette knife. I don't use these enough. So not only is it the value that's pulling some weight here, it's the nature of the mark. A mark in its own right carries weight. It's not just defining a thing.
Okay.
Right? So I'm gonna, how much time we got?
I can let you go a little bit long. We got about 10 minutes, probably.
All right.
Maybe a little more.
Let's try this guy just to see what it does.
This is called Fun with Tools.
Yeah, it's fun with tools. I don't want to encourage them to be used gratuitously. Everything is a part of the puzzle and not the means to the end. Or not the end itself. What did I do with my towels? Oh, here they are. Just so you know, I'm cramped into like a 2-foot square space here. I feel like
Now, how much do you really need, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Unless you're working on a 6-foot painting.
Yes, which is why I like the 6-foot paintings. That's too dark. I'll use this guy. This is tools do different things. This doesn't remove like that other tool did. It just softens. Break that line. Yeah. Move some. Soften. All right. Now what?
Now what?
I can't show you these. I've got like 400 brushes down here, which is too many because I just went to the store and bought a bunch of new brushes. I love this little green square thing right there. And I'm going to put that in as a light value. I may drop in it just for fun when I'm done with this thing. I may drop it in as a color note. Maybe I'm going to make that my darker value. Let's just see what happens. So I like to tape off a canvas or a piece of paper. Ooh. Because it does something psychologically that working on a full canvas doesn't do. When you get a big canvas, it becomes a battle to win. But if you have taped off canvases or taped off watercolor paper, your brain kind of goes into relax mode and you're more free to take chances and make unusual decisions.
So do you tape off sections when you're working on the big ones?
If I'm working on one big cohesive piece, I won't. I'll of course, work the whole piece at once. But yeah, this is I don't know what that is, 30 by 30. So to do studies, and it's really just the act of doing. This is what I'll do. I'll tape them off. Maul stick. This is my maul stick, which handcrafted in France. It's actually a dice that I got, or a die I got in the dollar store for a nice straight line as a counter. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby. So the components of painting are all these things that we learn about in college. Nice. I'm going to put this light value in. I'm going to try to put it in with this tool to get a different kind of mark. Not to use the same brush, same tool. Not that there's anything wrong with anything. It's just me trying to see what I can make happen with this simple construct here and these tools. So I've just loaded up this guy with a little bit of white here because I like this line that takes me down to this space. Yeah. Even the surface, and I want you to notice when you're looking at paintings, especially broadly painted, loosely painted, thickly painted, the texture of paint carries its own weight. It pulls the eye, it moves the eye in its own way.
Yeah.
So you become aware, especially when you're painting, when your painting doesn't rely on the content of a boat or a tree or any of those things. When you're just moving paint around to see what you can do, you more quickly get to your unique aesthetic. But also it shows you what these components can do in service to whatever your idea is, if you want to paint mountains and the like. So you can use passages of thin transparent washes in juxtaposition to dense areas of paint. That's a simple premise, right? That you can apply to anything. All right. I gotta quit talking here.
We like it when you talk.
I know. I like it when I talk too.
Yeah, we know.
I talk to myself hey, what was that? I talk to myself all the time. And
You're a little slow to react there. Must be a delay in the broadcast.
Yeah. No, that was in my brain. That was a brain delay. You know, the thing that I marvel about with John yesterday was his ability to communicate and paint at the same time. It's not easy. Yeah, it's a left brain, right brain configuration, and it's a hard thing to do. Right. There's all this wonderful mess down here, and I want to see if I can find unique ways to make that happen.
It's amazing how it's all come together with such simple pieces.
Well, you know, as again, that damn John Burton, he does these little small studies because he wants to keep the premise simple, the construct of it simple. Yeah. And the simpler we can make our starts, the more room that we have to grow. And, you know, sometimes I do an elaborate drawing in a start. Sometimes I do this. I just start laying down color and letting the image, which I find way more interesting because it gives me more room. I'm not painting to the line, so to speak.
Yeah. I was just thinking how much I love my job. I get to do this every day with people like you. This is so much fun.
I know. And the thing is, I just did that almost on purpose. This is the idea of a pattern, right? And I'll get back to what you just said there in a second, but because what I love about artists is their generosity, their giving spirit, and plein air painters are really the most fun people I've ever hung out with.
It's really true.
I haven't figured out the why of that one yet.
Because they're doing what they love and they're outdoors and they're in nature. Yeah. They're connecting at a deeper level with nature.
Yeah, and they don't care about money. So what I did here, which was actually me thoughtlessly moving my hands, is I created this pattern of 3 marks that I don't like. So I'm in a working studio, by the way. Yeah. So people are knocking on the door going.
So is it is it a gallery space?
Yeah, it's a gallery space. I have 3 artists here, which I didn't give you the tour because who's got time for that. All right, now I want some really beautiful, yummy brushwork down in this space. Hopefully I won't screw that up. Yeah, there's 3 artists here. Mark Horton. It's Horton Hayes Fine Art Studios in downtown Charleston. And here we go. And so we work together. Mark's easel is like 6 feet that way, but we get along fabulously.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame that they only give you a 4-foot square area.
Yeah, well, you know, I get a great rent reduction.
Every time I'm at Home Depot or any place, I'm always looking for the next gadget to make a mark.
Yes. The other idea, which is related to that, is to be open to all things and for inspiration, and not just look through the magazines. And I love the magazines. You guys do an amazing job of presenting paintings, but I find inspiration all around me. I find it in especially in Charleston. The walls of the buildings are decayed because it's sort of mandated that you can't paint them after 75 years. And there's patina, and that's inspiration. And the patterns in a rug, or even music, you know, just you listen and pay attention and stay open. It could be Chinese samurai armor, you know, something can trigger an idea, which is what we're always on the hunt for.
Yeah.
So this thing is starting to sort of come up here a little tiny bit in my reverse tonalist idea. I don't want to get too dark with these, or this is kind of mildly interesting.
I'm just going to step in for a second. We might get cut off on some platforms. We're on several platforms. If you get cut off, you will find us on one of the other platforms, YouTube, Facebook, elsewhere. So go in and search for Streamline Art Video if you get cut off. We're gonna ride till about however long he needs, up to about 10 or 15 minutes more, just because I want to give him a chance to take this as far as he can. And but at the same time, I've got another commitment, and I'm sure you do too. So
me, I got nothing. I just got painting. That's all I got.
Oh, that's nice. Got a lot of people watching from all over the world. Welcome, everybody.
Oh, hey, everyone. I forgot to say that. Hello,
Hey.
wherever you're from. I hope the weather's good. And everyone's healthy.
Maybe not in Sweden. Probably not real good right now.
No, I don't know.
I don't know.
I'd love to go there. And
It's been actually a pretty warm fall everywhere, from what I'm hearing, in a lot of places. I should also mention to you guys that check out watercolorlive.com. You will not believe the lineup. All right. So that looks to me like the air conditioning unit.
Well, I don't know what it is. It becomes, after a point,
But I love it.
It becomes part of the chessboard.
Yeah, it's really drawing me in, though, because of the contrast.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I intentionally boosted the contrast, which you can see now it stands out like a sore thumb. I could go in and lighten it, or I could create a balancing agent for that to give it a counterweight. Right? So if I drop that value, I'm not thinking about making this thing happen. I'm now interested in, I could actually just put that away, but I'm keeping it up just for the sake of argument. I'm really interested in what's going on in this space. What weight does that texture give me? What weight, energy does this bit of white paint up in here provide? What do I need to do to move the eye down into this space, which you'll find in the work of Caravaggio. Although surface wasn't a thing back then, they use value, they use lost edge, they use all these components to move your eye through the players on the stage, and to create that concept of hierarchy, so your eye knew where to go first. It's as true for this kind of painting as it is for any kind of painting.
Yep.
All right. So I want this to be I'm not going to belabor this too much, but it is fun. So one of the things that we do automatically, once we've been doing this long enough, is we seek variety in every move, in every brush mark, in every division of space. So I'm trying as hard as I can right now not to repeat, and not to repeat a shape, not to repeat a space. So this is a great exercise you just do at home. You can do it in gouache, you can do it in anything. This little shadow space here ends up becoming its own puzzle piece, which I like. And I want to be careful not to, there's a tendency when something starts feeling good, and you know what I'm talking about, you put it everywhere, right?
Right.
A color, oh, like, ooh, that color's great. You throw it everywhere in the painting and then it loses its power.
Yep.
We have to practice restraint and put down a mark and go, okay, you tell me now what I need to do. Tell me in this dialogue of painting, in the painting process, what's necessary. You have to listen. I'm not quite getting this energy down here that I want.
It's hard to paint and talk and be on doing this in front of all these people.
It is. I know. And there's like, what, 10, 15 people out there.
There's a total of 7 watching, actually.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't blame them. They probably got to eat lunch.
Looks like somebody from, I can't read it. It's in, looks like Israeli text, or maybe, I don't know what it is. I can't tell. If somebody can translate, put it in there. Everybody say where you're from. I forgot to mention we're giving away prizes for comments, and so make sure you say where you're from, because we have prizes for tomorrow. The prize today was a digital subscription that goes to Preetha Methandran from India. All right. So I forgot to do that, so I'm catching up now. And tomorrow we're giving away an easel brush clip. So those are kind of fun. All right. Now I've done my homework.
You're like Santa Claus.
I am like Santa Claus, including the belly and the white hair.
Oh, stop. You look fabulous. You're aging well. All right, I'm just going to do one more thing here. And I feel like, and this is the thing about this methodology, is you go by feel. I've spent my time painting realistically. I've spent my time making 2-dimensional space read like 3-dimensional space. And now it's playtime for daddy. Now I'm basically done raising the kids, so to speak. And I want to play around with just different notions and different ideas.
Yeah. Well, we got into it because it was fun. We got to keep it fun. It's real easy to fall into especially if you're making a good living, to fall into the trap of sameness.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I don't ever want to do that, which is why I do the abstract work, because it keeps me young, it keeps me fresh, it keeps me excited. And then I take the principles and I apply them back into what I do. And when I teach abstraction, I'm just teaching design. That's what I'm teaching. I'm teaching concept, design, and permission, giving yourself permission to try different things to build trust, which that's the hallmark of authenticity. When you trust in your decision process to the point where you're certain, that nothing sells more than authenticity. You can see it in the work in the museums. You can scan the work in the room and go, this guy, this woman, they believe in what they're doing. And even if I don't love the work, I'm buying in.
Well, I had a conversation with John Coleman, the great Western artist, one time, and he said, there's a lot of money in Western art, so a lot of people try to kind of edge their way in. He said, and the collectors can tell if you're authentic. He said, we live the cowboy life. I mean, we're cowboys. We have horses. We have saddles. We're into that stuff. He said, somebody coming to an event and putting on a cowboy hat and trying to do Western paintings, he said, everybody knows it's not authentic. You got to be authentic.
You do. And it's easy. Here, let me just pull this tape. I'm just going to kind of wrap this thing up, but say a few things. But it's easy to follow someone else's model. That's easy. it's a great and time-honored process of copying the masters or borrowing from those who go before us or who have established themselves. But the harder thing is to build your own model, and that's what this process has given me. Is it given me a way into finding the things that interest me.
But
and
you have to learn a model. You have to learn how to paint before you
do. Absolutely. Like I said, you got to learn the basics, the tenets. You have to learn the rules before you break them.
Yeah.
Depending on what I could say, and for most of these people that are watching, they're probably interested in realism, which is why I'm keeping this directed towards that concept of realism-based play. But there are a million ways to express an idea. That was a good move right there. That
was good. I noticed that.
Yeah. So
it really offered beautiful balance on that.
Thank you. And that's the point of this. You realize when these sort of non-rendered pieces, how important a mark is, even in black and white, how important this thing is, and that edge, and this gizmo right there to move your eye through the piece. And
be thoughtful about every mark.
Be thoughtful about every mark. And that's the whole point of this idea.
Yeah. Larry, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Eric. I love you. You're the best. And you know a lot of great artists, and that's pretty cool.
And you're one of them.
Aw.
Aw.
You.
Hey, this has been great. Thumbs up.
You,
applause.
Yeah.
So Larry Moore, let's see here. Where do we find all your stuff? LarryMooreStudios.com.
Yes. Yeah.
Go there and buy something. Spend money. Support artists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Buy his book.
I mean, I have a trust fund, but still.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
I was going to say.
I'm just squeaking by like everybody else.
Yeah. Well,
that's a good life. Yeah,
that's
it's a good life.
Thank you, Larry.
Thanks, Eric. It's so good to see you.
Take care, man.